croeso cynnes I cynhadledd CILIP Cymru 2021. A mae'n bleser mawr I bod yma I dathlu'r sesiwn arbennig am y Gwobrau Tir eleni. A very warm welcome to you all to the CILIP Conference here in Wales. And this session, which is all about celebrating the Tir Children's Books Awards. Now, I am Helgard Krause, CEO of the Books Council of Wales, and we have been celebrating these awards since 1976. So they're the oldest, longest standing awards that celebrate children's literature in Wales and about Wales. So we have some categories that cover Welsh language and also English language. And with the English language, we are looking always for an authentic Welsh background. So stories that are set in Wales, that celebrate Welsh culture, that make a reference to Welsh culture. And I'm very excited to introduce this session today. Bydd na'r ffilmiau byr am awduron sydd wedi mynd ar rhestrau sydd wedi cael ei gwneud gan Tinopolis, a diolch yn fawr iddyn nhw. Now, you will be seeing some wonderful films that were produced by Tinopolis, and many thanks to them, about the authors who have been shortlisted for the Welsh language. And then there will be a panel discussion with the English language shortlisted authors chaired by Joe Bowers. And then you have the opportunity for a Q&A session with the judges, Howell James and Joe Bowers, and they're very happy to take your questions and answer any that you might have. Just post your questions in the chat function, marking them with a Q, and they will be picked up. Now, of course, these awards are here to celebrate authors and publishers and to recognize excellence and to give us an opportunity to celebrate literature that we all love. But of course, really at the heart of all of this is that we want to inspire young people to read, to enjoy reading, to instill that habit, that lifelong habit of reading. And of course, libraries play an absolutely crucial role in doing this. I remember as a young child going to the library, working my way through the shelves and asking the librarian, what else can I read next? So to all of you librarians, thank you so much for all that you do, helping us to achieve our mission to make everyone, every child, every adult, an ambitious and committed reader. And particularly thank you for helping to support this award, for sponsoring this award, and working in partnership with us. So a huge thank you to CILIP. And of course, to the authors, everything starts with you, and to the publishers who put those magic touches in, the editors and the designers, and make those books the beautiful objects that they can be. And last but not least, to my wonderful team at the Books Council, who work tirelessly to finding new ways, new and exciting ways of promoting books to children for them to enjoy. There will be some Welsh language content, so if you need translation, the instructions are in the chat, so please do follow them. And any problems, just give a shout out to the CILIP team and they will help you. So, diolch yn fawr iawn. Mae'n bleser mawr nawr I trosglwyddo I dathliad Gwobrau Tir. A diolch yn fawr I chi am ymuno ni heddi.
Hiw Aron, ydw I, a fi yw awdur Ble Mae Boc ar goll yn y chwedlau, sydd ar rhestr fer Gwobrau Tir eleni. Fel y llyfr cyntaf yn y gyfres, Ble Mae Boc, mae rhaid ffeindio'r ddraig fach sydd wedi mynd ar goll tro yma mewn chwedlau a straeon gwahanol Cymru.
Mae Sŵ Sara Mai yn nofel I blant rhwng 7 ac 11 oed ac yn dilyn Hynt a Helynt Sara Mai sydd yn byw mewn sŵ. Dyna'n cael dipyn o helyntion yn y sŵ a dipyn o helyntion yn y dosbarth hefyd. Ni wir eisiau bod yn geidwad sŵ. Yn amlwg nath hynny ddim digwydd, felly dwi wedi gallu byw hynny ychydig bach trwy'r sgwennu nofel am blentyn mewn sŵ.
Mae'r cyfanity yn dilyn diwrnod ar ei hyd, o'r haul yn gwawrio yn y bora tan iddi nosi yn yr hwyr. A dwi'n cyflwyno'r 5 synwyr i blant drwy gyflwyno gwahanol olygfeydd cyfarwydd o fyd natur. A mae clywed rhieni'n deud fod y llif cyson yma sydd yn y llyfr yn gymorth i suo eu plant nhw i fynd i gysgu gyda'r hwyr yn galondid mawr i mi achos dyma oedd rhan o weledigaeth wreiddiol y gyfrol.
Dwi wrth o modd fod y llyfr yma ar restr fer Gwobrau Tir na Nog. Mae'r wobr yma yn dathliad o lyfrau plant Cymru, cymaint o llyfrau da, ac wrth edrych nôl ar y flynyddoedd fi, a gymaint o pobl ac awduron ac arlunwyr ffantastig sydd wedi ennill y wobr. Mae'n fraint i fod hwn ymysg y rai sydd wedi dewis eleni.
Dwi'n ei chyfri hi'n gymaint o fraint cael fy nghynnwys yng Nghystadleuaeth Tir na Nog. A phan glywys i fod mae'r cyfanity wedi cyrraedd y rhestr fer eleni, o'n i'n naturiol wrth fy modd. Mae o'n sicr yn hwb ac yn ysgogiad mawr yn greadigol ac mae'n rhyw fath o gadarnhad i mi mod i gobeithio ar y trywydd iawn yn creu y math yma o gyfrola ar gyfer plant ifanc.
Pam nes i ffeindio allan bod wedi cyrraedd y rhestr, o'n i wedi gwirioni. Dwi'n darllen gwaith gyn awduron sydd wedi bod ar rhestr fer Tir na Nog a wedi ennill y wobr ers blynyddoedd maith, felly mae'n fraint mawr cael yng nghynnwys ar y rhestr.
Enw'r llyfr di'r Castell Siwgr ac dwi'n mynd ar ôl 2 ferch. Un yn Morwyn Fach yng Nghastell y Penrhyn a'r llall yn Geithferch yn Jamaica. Ac bod nhw ar 2 gyfandir gwahanol, yr hyn sy'n eu hunan nhw ydy'r arglwydd Penrhyn.
Mae Llechi yn nofel i bobl ifanc am Bethesda, dweud y gwir. Mae'n nofel reit dywyll, ond mae'n eisiau sgwennu rhywbeth oedd yn portreadu hyfrytwch Bethesda yn ddaearyddol, ond hefyd y gymuned sydd o gwmpas.
Enw fy nofel ydy Helynt, neu Hashnod Helynt, a mae'n stori Rachel Ross, goth ifanc sy'n byw yn Rhestrau, a mae Rachel yn canfod cyfrinach byddai'n medru chwalu ei theulu. Mae gan Rachel dipyn ar ei fflat, mae hi'n gofalwr am ei mam sy'n dioddef o iselder, mae gan ddi anabledd hefyd, mae gan ddi goes prosthetig, a hefyd mae gan ddi tad hefo problemau gyda'i dymer, so mae gan ddi dipyn ar ei fflat.
Dwi wrth fy modd fod Llechi ar rhestr fer Gwobrau Tir na Nog. Dwi'n teimlo mor freintiedig. Mae pobl yn pigo fy llyfrau i fyny ac yn darllen nhw. Ac yn enwedig efo Llechi, dwi'n meddwl bod hi'n nofel chydig bach yn wahanol i'r pethau dwi wedi sgwennu o blaen. O'n i'n teimlo fatha bod fi'n cymryd bach o risg yn ei sgwennu hi, felly mae jyst yn hyfryd cael gydnabyddiaeth.
Dwi'n falch iawn o fod ar y rhestr fer ac bod o'n rhywbeth yn ystod yr pandemig yma ac mae'n siŵr bod yr amser ges i wedi bod o help, ond dwi'n meddwl bod wedi ffeithio peth ar y nofel hefyd. Ffaith bod fi yn dan glo yn ystod y cyfnod yna yn gwneud fi yn ieithu efo bod yn forwyn falle'n Castell Penrhyn.
Roedd ffeindio allan fy mod i ar y rhestr fer yn sioc. Do'n i wirioneddol ddim wedi disgwyl fod ar y rhestr fer, ond mae o'n anrhydedd achos pan wyt ti'n sbio ar safon y rhestr fer bob blwyddyn i feddwl fy mod i'n cael fy ystyried yn deilwng, mae hwnna jyst yn deimlad anhygoel.
Today we've got the opportunity to meet the 3 authors and hear them talking about their books. It's very exciting. Now, I've just got to say before they start talking about their books and answering some of the questions that I've got for them today, that all 3 shortlisted books were outstanding and they stood out uniquely from each other. All 3 books had their story set against a rich, authentic Welsh background, which is central to the criteria for this reward, and each one did it in very different ways. The Short Knife by Ellen Caldecott was an outstanding and original story with a strong female voice and a story that with a twist that grips you right from the start. It's eloquently written and it has lyrical language throughout, set in the early Middle Ages, an important time in Welsh history when Welsh identity was just starting to emerge. And The Quilt by Valerian LeBlanc is a beautifully illustrated story about migration. It's about longing and family life in rural Wales at the turn of the century, and the journey that this family make to America with a strong sense of setting and Welsh history. And Where the Wilderness Lives by Jess Butterworth is another beautifully written story, but this is an adventure story, but again with a rich Welsh setting that introduced me to aspects of Wales I didn't know about, with themes of friendship, bravery, survival, and the environment. So welcome, Ellen, Valerian and Jess. It's absolutely lovely to have you here today. And I've got you for about 40 minutes, I think, listening to you and answering some questions. So it's lovely to meet you. I'm going to get started straight away with the questions, if that's okay with you, because I'm sure everybody's really looking forward to hearing about the books that I've just been talking about. So what I want to talk about first is the background, the Welsh background, because the English language shortlist of the Tir na Nog Award honours books with an authentic Welsh background for children and young people. And as I've said, each of your stories was set against that rich, authentic Welsh background, but again, in very different ways to each other. So can you tell us where the initial idea and seed came from for your book? And was it important from the outset to connect it so centrally with the landscape in Wales? Ellen, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting us along. It's great. So the seed for this book actually didn't start with Wales and the Welsh language. That initially, my interest was in language as a creative tool and of translation as something that you can use to generate stories and books and to generate a voice. So a few years ago, I'd written a book called Diamonds and Daggers, which has a Polish lead character. And in chapter 2 or something like that, I'd said the Polish boy always speaks to his dad in Polish. And then by chapter 18, you've forgotten that fact, you know? And the copy editor said to me, isn't it weird that their English is so perfect? Should we mess with that a little bit to represent the fact that, you know, that it's their second language? And I said, well, no, they're not actually talking English. They're talking Polish. And it became clear that that was a creative problem. Like, how do you represent another language if you're having to write in this world language and in English? And as I speak English and I speak Welsh, I decided that I could tackle that creative problem using those two languages. So it was like a Sudoku, really. I wanted to work out how to do something, and Welsh was my resource for being able to do that. So the story and the setting and the use of the Welsh history kind of grew out of that particular problem that I wanted to solve. So it was my intention that the book would feel as if you were reading a Welsh speaker, and that this was almost a translation, or that you were just, hearing at the very edge of your, range of sound, that you were hearing the echoes of another language coming through.
That's fascinating that language was your basis, but actually, because language is so intrinsically attached to the landscape of Wales, I can see how the landscape then came in to the book. So I can see that. Valerian, how was that for you then? So that's I'd be interested to hear how the seed came from and the initial idea was for the quilt.
Well, it's perfect what Ellen just said, because I've wrote this book in French, my mother's tongue, and then I adapted it to English and Welsh, so my second and third languages. So the process of writing it was similar maybe to Ellen's process. And I read a book by Haruki Murakami, and he said that when he started to write, he wrote in English, and he translated it to Japanese. So his Japanese would be very minimal because he didn't know so many words in English, so he would keep it minimal, and it gave me the confidence to try to write something in a language that is not mine. So yes, thank you for this, Ellen. It's really interesting.
That's a fascinating link between the two. I've heard him talking about that as well, actually, Valerian. So that is fascinating. So we've got a link here, haven't we? We've seen the two books. Again, the quilt and the short knife, very different, but actually you're both saying that language was that initial idea, and because you're both bilingual, you had that starting point from where you came from, and obviously your connection with Wales, being from Wales or living in Wales, I guess became that the Welsh part of it was central to the idea that was coming forwards. Jess, how was that for you then, in terms of your initial idea and seed for your book?
Oh, it's so interesting hearing about the language. For me, I usually get my story ideas from the setting to start with, or a sense of place. And I was living in the States a few years ago, and I was experiencing something that Valerian writes about so beautifully, which is homesickness and a longing for another place. And I was actually longing for Wales. Growing up, my aunt and uncle lived in South Ceredigion in the Teifi Valley, and I'd spend lots of time there. And then after my parents divorced, it kind of became like a second home. And so I was able to plan a trip and visit them. And on this trip, I walked over the Preseli Hills and I visited the forests that I used to love going to. And I discovered that these forests were actually also known as Celtic rainforests, or a fragment of them was. And I thought that was so interesting. And then I discovered all the lichen that lived in them, and things like the fact that Wales has the highest diversity of lichen species. And after I discovered that, I was set. I knew that that's where I had to set a story. So that's where it began.
That, I have to say, that for me was fascinating, and I know it is for other readers that I've talked to about. I never knew this about Wales, having lived in Wales all my life. I didn't know about these Celtic rainforests. I didn't know about this lichen, and I've started looking it up since reading your book. And that's what I think is really exciting about books, where you actually want to find, you know, books are fiction. Let's not deny that first and foremost, it's a fantastic adventure story, but actually you can learn things, can't you, from the book? And it was very much about a setting, as you said. I wonder, Ellen and Valerian, just going back to the landscape, your landscape, Jess, you wanted to place it somewhere. And again, that's what made it quite unique, that unique setting. I guess there's quite a lot of people in Wales who didn't know about that landscape that you're setting your book in. Ellen and Valerian, your set landscapes are more ambiguous. So was that quite important to you, to keep that ambiguity in your landscape? It's not obvious exactly where at all times, is it, you're talking about? Valerian, do you want to answer first?
Yeah, so it's ambiguous, but I think it's quite clear that it's set in Wales.
Yes.
And well, I was hesitating between being precise, and because I'm telling a story that has taken place in real places.
Yeah.
At the same time, I wanted to keep it universal, so I didn't want to put too much details. But people who know about Liverpool will recognize Liverpool in the book. So there are some precise landscapes.
Exactly, and actually there's different parts of Wales where that will have been going on at that point in Welsh history, so it will resonate with lots of different areas in Wales, won't it, when people are perhaps researching Welsh history. So another book that again gives you that sort of historical context, doesn't it, as well as the story that you've got there. Ellen, what about yours in terms of the landscape?
Well, it's not Wales, actually.
I think that's what I was, yeah.
Most people, well, a lot of people, when they've read the book, assume it's Wales, as it is now, where the border is now. But because it's set in the 5th century, the idea of Wales, with that kind of line going down Shropshire and that wasn't what Wales looked like. It wasn't that border. So it's actually set near Bristol, and if you know what you're looking for in the text, you get those clues. I talk about the Severn and having to cross the Severn to get to Gwent. So there are clues there, but I wanted to kind of hark back to the idea of Wales being, or Welsh culture being bigger than the boundary of the country today, that there was a point in British history where you would have heard Old Welsh right across the country. And in fact, the oldest surviving manuscript that we have in Welsh is the Gododdin, which is written in the 6th century, and that is written in Edinburgh. So Welsh went all over the place, and indeed to northern France as well, so to Brittany. So it's Wales and it's not Wales.
No, it's true. And Jess, just going back to you there, yours is Wales and it's not Wales, isn't it, as well? Because some of the book isn't in Wales and some of the book is. And that's the important part of this award, is that it's about actually celebrating something that's unique and rich about Wales, not that it's actually got a whole setting in Wales. And I'm guessing you agreeing with that. But yours was the same, Jess, wasn't it? That you had some different settings in there, didn't you, too?
Did. Originally, the whole book was going to be set in Wales, but my main character lives on a boat, and she has quite a big family and quite a big boat, and I felt like I didn't know enough about the Welsh canals in order for her to live on a Welsh canal, whereas I know the Kennet and Avon Canal really well, and so I kind of played around with the book, starting on the Kennet and Avon Canal and then ending up the main adventure in Wales. So that.
Yes, but again, it's that unique aspect of that landscape that you brought in that makes it that rich part of Wales, really. And again, and we've talked a bit about Welsh history. So I just want to touch a little bit upon that now. So Welsh history and heritage and the legends and folk tales of Wales are quite strong themes in each of your books, again in different ways. So could you tell us a bit more about why you chose to weave this into the story of each told? So Jess, you wove yours in with a different story line that ran parallel to the main story. That actually, I have to say, I didn't see the end. I'm not going to say anything because there may be people listening today that haven't read your book yet, but I didn't see the ending coming, and I didn't see how beautifully you wove them together. And I'm just going to leave it there because I'm not going to give any spoilers. But can you tell us a bit more why you brought that aspect of folk tales? Because I think it's not a specific folk tale within yours, is it? But aspects of. But I could be wrong. Tell us more.
No, that's exactly right. I've always been interested in the connection between people and place, and with the Celtic rainforest being so ancient as well, I wanted to bring in an aspect of perhaps the things that these trees have seen through different time periods. And one of my favourite books when I was about 9 years old was a book called Holes by Louis Saka, and it weaves
I love that book.
Whole storylines parallel, and then they all meet at the end. And it wasn't as conscious as thinking I want to do that, but looking back, I think I kind of drew inspiration from that book. So one story that I love is Grion and Ceridwen the Witch. I took aspects of that Welsh folk tale, and then another one that I love is a medieval poem called The Battle of the Trees, and I read that as a child, or a part of it, and in it, it's set in a battle, and a sorcerer brings to life the trees to help him fight. And I've always loved the imagery of trees coming to life. And again, I think it's used in Lord of the Rings with the Ents, the kind of tree people. So it was a kind of mashup of those two stories, and then aspects of other legends and folklore as well. I drew from lots of different things.
That's
yeah.
No, it's fascinating how you've managed to bring those in, but then you create this story as well. Actually, I'm going to come to you, Ellen, as well, because you've been creative with things in your book as well, haven't you? And that's what I think is the strength of both your books, that you were creative with, rather than just giving that story that everybody might know. Because just what you've asking people to do is to go and explore them yourselves, because clearly they were important to you as a reader to want to play with them in the books that you're writing. And I got the feeling, Ellen, that's the same with you. You were playing with and being creative a little bit as well, whereas at the same time being factual. And so tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, factual is something of a stretch when you're talking about,
yeah, well, you know, so stories that might resonate as you know them. Yes.
Yeah. So I did use a particular legend, which is called the Treachery of the Long Knives, and that is a kind of a British legend rather than a particularly Welsh one. And I won't say what the legend is because it's a really important part of the finale of my story.
Yes,
so I'm just going to leave it there.
Again, another spoiler note.
But that the hero, or the sort of anti-hero of that story, is a character called Vortigern in British legend, and that Vortigern, at the end of the Treachery of the Long Knives, flees to Wales and sets up a kingdom, or a prince. He becomes a prince of Powys, and we know him as Gwrtheyrn. And he's then kind of, he's attached to Merlin, and he's attached to stories about dragons, and so he's a kind of central figure of early British mythology. And I wanted to write about him. I'd had an interesting conversation with a scholar called Cathy Butler, who had reminded me of the female characters in the Vortigern story, and I was wanting to write about early medieval women, and that conversation reminded me that there were women out there if I went looking, and so I took elements of that historical that legend and adapted them to fit the sort of narrative that I wanted to tell about women.
Yeah, and I think that was another, for me, strength really for me as a reader, was that actually, we do need more books that actually bring the female perspective and the female voice from parts of history. And in this instance, Welsh history. It's rare, isn't it, really? And we need more of that. So that was a real kind of exciting part of the book, I think, that we heard that voice coming through. Well, there's more than one voice, but this, the central character. Yeah, definitely. So Valerie-Anne, for you, yours. So we've got female characters here actually talking about that. We've got three good.
And actually, I can relate again with Ellen.
Okay. Yeah.
Because, well, in my book, the quilt is almost a character, and it's a tradition that has been forgotten for years. It's coming back now, but the quilt making has been forgotten. It has been made over the centuries by women, and there are quite a lot of talks now about all the anonymous work where women's work, so artwork and needlework, samplers, all that. So it was important for me that the tradition of Welsh quilts were put forward and shown to people, and to show that women were responsible for that. So when we talk about the Middle Ages, we think about knights and all men character, but of course women were there as well. And in my book, I wanted to show that as well, the presence of women in the last centuries.
No, I think that's really again another real strong point of the quilts, and there are many as I've said, but the idea that something like quilting is a craft that could die out, could be forgotten if we don't remember, where it came from. But also it gives you the opportunity to research through the ages, and we've got places in Wales like St Fagans where you can go and find out and learn and do more about that. But just to have a story where you bring that to the fore and get that strong female presence within that part of history, it's really important, I think, as well as a reader to share that with young children, because the quilt, I think, is universal as a picture book, isn't it? It could be for very young children, but it can actually be for older children, and you can do that research aspect as well. So I agree. So we've started to talk a little bit about characters here, and coming to you, Valerie-Anne, first, actually. So you've all created very memorable main characters, and I suppose I want to hear a little bit more about how you developed your character and what you hoped your readers would learn from them. I'll come to each of you, Jess and Ellen, in a moment. We've touched upon your characters. Jess, we haven't talked about your character yet, so I'm looking forward to that in a moment. Valerie-Anne, yours is the one character that has no name. And actually, maybe you could say that your main character was the family in a way. I don't know, and I'm going to leave you to answer that. But how did that develop for you? And what did you want your readers to gain? You've started to tell us a little bit about the Welsh craft and history of that, but tell us a bit more.
So I wanted to write a book about the quilt tradition and also about migration and the way we can relate to migration nowadays, and because people are still moving and changing places. So I wanted to keep it quite universal. I didn't want to make it into one time and one place. I wanted to keep it open. So I came up with the idea of a family, but until the last minute, I didn't know if it would be a little boy or a little girl. And because I did the picture as well, I wanted the characters to be not too quite plain, not too definite with traits, so it's easier to relate to them. So yeah, my main character, the little girl, has no name. She has a gender, but it's not important in the story at all. And in a way, maybe the quilt has more personality than the little girl.
And I was just going to say that. You almost must have read my mind, Valerie-Anne, actually, because I was thinking, actually, the quilt is almost like the main character in that book. And because yours is a picture book, that quilt plays out in so many different ways throughout the book, doesn't it, really? Every page alludes to the quilts. If it's not the quilt itself in context, in different contexts, it's through the shape of the birds and the colours of the birds, it's through the boat as it crosses the ocean. So we could say the quilt is that main character. Was that really important to you for the pictures to really explore that aspect of the story?
Yes, it was really important to keep the focus on the quilt, and the quilt can symbolize what you take with you when you move. It doesn't have to be to another country, it can be to another house, or even when you leave childhood to become an adult. It's what I wanted the quilt to personalized.
So it was a real sort of symbolism that went throughout the book, wasn't it? Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm thinking I'm liking the quilt as your main character. Yeah. Jess, yours very much was a person, your main character. So tell me about your main character. How did you develop her, and what did you want your readers to learn from them? And you might want to tell us a little bit about your other characters as well, because although there was a main character, you had other characters who had important parts within that context of the story, didn't you, as well?
Did. Actually, Where the Wilderness Lives is the book that has the most characters in it for me. So that was something really fun to write. But my main character is called Cara, and when I was writing the story, I did a lot of thinking back to the challenges that I faced when I was Cara's age. So kind of starting at a new school, going from primary school to secondary school, fitting in, bullying. And then at that point, to develop my characters, I always ask a lot of questions to them. So it's as if I'm having conversations with them. And one of the things that I found out about Cara is that she's really determined, and she has a lot of courage, which are some of the things that I love about her. And also she has 3 younger siblings, so twins, and then a middle sibling as well. She's the oldest. And along her journey, she makes friends with someone who she doesn't think that she's going to make friends with them at first. So that was another important kind of meeting and character in the book. Yeah.
But actually environmental issues are big for Cara as well, aren't they, in there? You know, that's so that's quite an important, and the survival. So she had to be quite a strong character to survive in some of the situations you place her in. So was that quite important to get that message out there as well? Because you do learn about the environment and surviving in extreme environments through reading the novel, don't you?
Yeah, I really wanted that to be something that she doesn't view as a strength to begin with, even though it's a really big part of her. You know, she lives on the boat and she's really familiar with being out in the wilderness. But it's not until she goes on this journey that she realizes sort of her inner strength and how important the caring about the environment is to her. And I really hope that readers are maybe comforted by her journey and perhaps share her wonder and joy at the world around us and the forest that she finds herself in. And I really wanted the reader to come away feeling, you know, not alone in whatever challenges they're facing.
So alone, I'm going to pick up on that and come to you, Ellen, because that's something, survival and being alone is something that's quite key, isn't it, for your main character as well? I'm not going to say that's the only thing, but how did you develop your character? What did you want readers to learn from her?
Well, it was her voice that came first, actually. So the main character is Mai, and because I knew that I wanted to play with language, she was the point of view character. So she's the narrator of the story, and the way that her personality was shaped by the voice ultimately. So it was her way of seeing the world and expressing things that led me to work back. So, for example, one of the ways that I wanted to infuse the English with a sense of Welshness was that I translated a dictionary of idioms, and I used that database to kind of create interesting metaphor and simile and so on. So lots of the idioms in Welsh are kind of to do with the domestic history in a way. So kind of, you know, if you're gonna tell someone to mind their own business, you tell them to go and boil their own pots is how you would express that. So the home and you know, farming and gardening and agricultural tasks, those sorts of things have become the idioms of the Welsh language. So once I had this kind of database of idioms that I knew that I wanted to include, I had to have a farmer's daughter because so much of the language is of the landscape of the earth, of agriculture. So I kind of worked back from that. I also wanted her to have something of a poet's voice. So I made her dad a storyteller, a bard. So it was kind of that it was the way that she spoke that necessitated all of the decisions about who she was and what her lifestyle was going to be. And I just want to pick up on the idea of migration that Valerie-Anne talked about, because that was such an important idea in Mai's story and her journey, that she moves away from the kind of safety of home and she heads out into a much more complex landscape where there are big migrations of people going on across the whole island, as sort of Saxon incomers coming in one direction and Welsh people kind of moving in the other. And that idea of what gets left behind when you migrate was really important for Mai's character too. Which parts of herself does she retain when she starts speaking another language, living in a different community, was really important in forming her character.
And that's interesting you say what she leaves behind, because actually then sort of the flip side of it, Valerie-Anne, is what they take with them. So that's quite fast. It's exploring both aspects, isn't it, really? And in all three of them, they all leave their comfort, don't they? Because obviously Cara has to leave what she knows to get to where she is. In a way, she's looking for sort of security to find, I'm not going to say too much, but she has to go on a sort of journey. So that journey is there in a very different way in your book too, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and she really has to, kind of being the oldest, I think, out of her siblings, she's the one who kind of leads the group and decides where they're going. And I really enjoyed finding out how she navigated the landscape and sort of putting in all the places that they find, although the journey isn't exactly the right path on the map. Took a few liberties with that, but there are real places that she does find herself at, like Nevern Church and an ancient burial chamber called Pentre Ifan. So that part of the journey was really fun to research and write.
Yeah, and it's really fun as a reader to then look into those parts of Wales that we didn't know about as well. So that is interesting, and it's fascinating listening to you all talking together, because it's so rare. I mean, this is a real treat for me. I won't deny it, to be able to talk to you all together about the books, which I started out saying are so very different from each other. And I think we've come round sort of after all our discussion here, we haven't finished yet, but that actually there's so many, and this is what I love about talking about books, there's so many links and connections to all your very different books, which actually, will appeal to different readers of different ages, won't they? All your books. I'm not saying the same ages couldn't read your books, but there are different kind of contexts of ages. But there's so many links and connections just listening there. So the migration one is fascinating, and the survival aspect and the female central character. I'm just trying to think, are there any more connections that have come to your mind as we've been talking here? Can anybody think of any others that link your books together? And put you on the spot really, but I'm just thinking there are so many similarities, yet they're all so different. And
I mean, I'm not sure about the shared objects potentially, because my has a family heirloom that plays a part in the plot. She rescues something from, there's sometimes when you do a creative writing course, they'll get you to write down what are the important things about your character, and one of the questions is what would they rescue from a burning building, and something actually does get rescued from a burning building in my book, and that kind of family heirloom is a repository for all of her kind of beliefs about herself and her hopes for herself. It's got kind of religious overtones to it. So there might be that kind of shared object, the precious object link as well.
There is definitely that key object, isn't there? Because obviously it's very obvious, Valerie-Anne, it's the quilt, isn't it, in your book? And Jess, the object that is found is key to the whole plot for yours, isn't it?
It is. So Cara and her siblings find a locked safe when a part of the canal is drained, and it's been sitting at the bottom of this canal for years. And part of their journey is trying to open it and discover what's inside. So I won't say what's inside, but I agree. I think that's definitely a link.
Yeah, and I think each of those links and connections stand out more obviously in one book than the other, but actually you can actually link it in. So, and I'm fascinated to think about, actually, we've talked about character, we've talked about setting, we've talked about landscape and location, and I hadn't thought about objects. So thank you, Ellen, for bringing that in, because actually the key to yours is something, isn't it, Valerie-Anne? It's the quilt. Yeah. So, I mean, all these books now, we're coming towards the end now, and do let me know if there's anything else that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to tell me and butt in. But I do really want to bring in that when we think about these stories, we want them to reach as many readers as possible. When I say many readers as possible, I know you write for children, but you know, I think there's we've talked about the universal aspect of your books. I think they're universally accessible to all. Although for the short knife, obviously there's an age where we start reading it. Jess, there's of an age where you would start reading it, but you know, moving on towards older readers, myself included in that. But thinking about that, obviously thinking about the conference that we're going to share this at, what can you tell us about libraries that mean for you as an author today? Not just as an author, but for you as a reader. What does it mean to you? Ellen, would you like to start us off on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm blessed in that I have had, for the last 10 or so years, I've had access to academic libraries as well as public libraries, and I wouldn't be able to write without libraries, actually. Certainly the short knife, I ended up submitting it for a PhD. I got my doctorate by writing the short knife, and the access to libraries was absolutely essential. You know, I know that Valerie-Anne is in Aberystwyth near the National Library there. I spent a lot of time in Aberystwyth's University Library in order to write the short knife. It just wouldn't have existed without academic libraries. And in terms of my access to public libraries, it's what's kept me together this past year. You know, being able, I've got the app for my local library that has the audiobooks, and I have just been listening to audiobooks and you know, walking when I've been allowed, doing my hours exercise with an audiobook on the go, and it has just been an absolute lifesaver for me. And yeah, as soon as my local library, my public library is open again, which it isn't yet, but as soon as it is, I will be in there like a shot with my big list of things to reserve.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. My local library I've been going to for 25 years, and they now ring me up and say, we've got this book, Jo, we think you might like it. And I feel, it makes me feel really special. I can't tell you, it makes my day when that happens. And obviously books like your books, obviously I've bought and I've got, but there's I can't buy every single book that I want to read. I'm sure you would all agree with that. And when books come out and you can't wait for the paperback to come out, the library get them for you. What would we do without them? Absolutely. So tell me, Jess, for you, what are libraries as a reader, but also as an author? How do they serve you, and how important are they to you?
One of my best library memories is from when I was about 8 years old, I think, and I can really clearly remember being able to choose my own book from a library to take home. And I think, you know, having that feeling, that agency and that sense of ownership over what you want to read, I chose The Butterfly Line by Michael Morpurgo, and it was the first book that I got that feeling of wanting to find out what happens next and really turn the pages. And then ever since then, I've obviously been a regular in libraries and love them so much. And I think as an author, they are so important as well. I spend so much time reading books that as you said, you can't buy every book.
You can't, no.
And there are so many wonderful books that I'd love to read. And this past year as well, they've been really important. I also have the audiobook app. It's a lifesaver. And I think one of the wonderful things about reading is that not only do you build empathy and you put yourself in someone else's shoes, but you also get a chance to imagine the world in a different way. And as a writer, I need that to generate more ideas. I know some authors prefer not to read when they're writing, but I love to read. I feel like I get more ideas from the more books I read, and libraries are just so important to that.
Yeah, as you say, ideas from books. Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Valerie-Anne? Because Ellen has just said you do live in the place in Wales where the biggest library exists, haven't you?
Yeah, and well, I live just next to the town library as well. And the book council is up the hill, so I'm
surrounded.
Yes. The only thing with me is that, well, reading is a pleasure for me, and it's easier for me to read in French, and I enjoy reading in French. So I think people who are able to borrow books in their mother's tongue are so lucky. And
Yes.
I don't really use the library for myself because I like to read in French, but for my children, and to give the opportunity to children and, well, anyone really, to build their own memories just by going into a building, borrowing books that are suitable for you at that time in your life, and
Yes.
all that for free. I think it's magical.
It is magical. I think that's a really good word to end that discussion on. It's totally magical. And actually what's been here today, it's been absolutely a privilege to chat to you three today and listen. I hope everybody has enjoyed listening as much as I've enjoyed talking to you today. There's many more things I want to ask you, but I'm told we're now minutes away from our session time that we've got allocated. I think we've done really well to time. I think we've got a couple of minutes left. So I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you for your time, to Jess, to Valerie-Anne, to Ellen. It's been an absolute joy talking to you and listening. And thank you for writing these books. They are, I'm going to end on the word that I started with, outstanding. And they've brought me so much joy too. And I know they've brought so much joy to lots and lots of readers that I know, and many, many more that I don't know about. Thank you very much for your time today. And I look forward to hopefully talking to you again in the not too distant future.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.